web string that I gave you that you could kind of watch what I was doing? I'm gonna paste. Anyway, it's just a link, and I just pasted it into the Hangout. Do you see it there?
I see. Is it the one you emailed me?
No. I just
Okay,
pasted it,
there it is.
and if you click on it, it should drop you in here. Yep, I can see that you're in there. And so
There it is.
can you see where I am?
Yep.
All right. You must have a
I
big
see
monitor.
clear.
You must have a huge monitor, actually. Man.
No, it's like a 14-inch screen, something like that. Or no, 17-inch.
Is this legible to you? The size of it?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that Ruby's an object-oriented language, and with a lot of my students, I found out that they weren't super clear about the difference between even like what a class is and what an object is, what an instance is, and like the other day when we were talking about
Instance variables.
Yeah, that was you, right? We were talking about instance variables
Yeah.
versus non-instance variables. So, to try to figure all that out in the middle of a controller, it means there's a lot of static that's kind of interfering with your ability to just isolate these concepts. So, here we are, and I'm just gonna make a folder, and we'll call it sandbox or something. And I'm gonna make a Ruby file here that has no meaning, and here we are. So how do you make a class in Ruby? Just like this.
You would say class space capital something.
Yep. And that's enough. And so when you make a class, have you heard any metaphors where people try to describe a class? They'll say a class is kind of like a whatever, and an object is like, or an instance.
Well, if you're using dog, I've heard a class is like a dog, and
what if I said
method is like bark.
Yeah, that's right. Or like car, and so people will say like, well, a class is kind of like a factory, and
Oh.
uh,
And a car is like the rest is like the type of car. So the color, the make, the model.
mm-hmm. And so you may have a car class, and then you have instances of the car, and that's like this factory produced cars. I mean, that's an okay metaphor, and it's very common, but instead of factory, I like to use the word blueprint. It's like your class defines the characteristics of this thing, and so when you actually build the thing, you can look at that class to understand the thing that you made. Anyway, none of these are perfect metaphors, but so if I have this car class defined, which is pretty much empty, and I'm going to run IRB here, and I think I can just pull up the what did I call that file? Oh, I didn't save it yet. So
Foo.rb.
yeah, so let me do this.
So I sent a GitHub link of mine to a car class that I've already built.
Okay. Yeah, so if I run IRB and I'm in here, I can say like car.new, and it's returning some stuff. So
Every time it's a new car. So
Yeah.
now you have 5 new cars.
that's right, and you're already further along than Connor was when we talked about this, because Connor didn't know that, and you can kind of tell.
Well, I understand pieces of it. I just
Yeah.
don't understand the full picture.
Okay, so every car here has a different ID. You can kind of see if you look at the last digits, they're different, and
Yeah.
we're not assigning them to anything. So really, I don't have any way to get back to any of these cars because they floated away without being, I didn't assign it like this. If I did that, then later on I can refer to it and get back to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so like that's the simplest kind of that's a class. And let's go back to the dog class because I'm more comfortable with things like this. And so when you have a dog class or a class, you can have a method in that class, right?
Yeah. Like
And
def bark.
yeah, like bark. And I'm trying to think of one. Let's see.
flea bite, scratch.
I'm trying to think of something that's, uh, yeah, bark's
or
fine. Okay, so
or lab. You can do different types like lab and whatnot.
yeah,
Black.
yeah. So I define this method, and if someone said, "What kind of a method is this?" Then how there's different kinds of methods on any class, right? There's methods called
I
instance methods and class methods.
didn't know that.
Okay, yeah, and it's pretty important because it's all over Rails. You just might not realize that it is. So basically, an instance method is going to look like bark, like that bark method. Class methods, here I'll put a comment above it. A class method is going to look more like this. It might have like the name of the class first.
Oh, so like if you made a lab and you put like def or in a different class, like class lab dot dog, it would inherit
No,
bark. Like, is that what you're talking about?
no, I know where you're going, and that's not really. It's more like an instance method is like this is related to one dog, like to this dog,
Yes.
to this dog. So every single dog that you make is going to have a bark method that does something, and it might be different for every dog that you make, even though this one is hard coded in here, so it's going to be the same. But a class method is like a method, and it's not related to a single dog instance. It's more related to the dog blueprint, the dog concept. So like a class method might be like, I just can't think of one. Okay, like this, like self dot or definite. I would say like this is so dumb. Likes cats. Okay,
Sure.
and
Sure.
the answer would pretty much be false. Although I'm sure there's exceptions. Or
So a class method is a Boolean?
no, but it's like it's not something that is related to or how about this one? Here we go. Number of legs. Okay, and so this is related to the breed, the genus of dog or the concept of a dog.
Yes.
Generally, dogs have that many legs unless they like live next to a minefield. That's how many legs dogs have. So, so when you create a dog, if I run this thing over here again, I can create a dog, and that dog, if I do that, look, it'll bark, right?
Yeah.
But if I do some dog dot number of legs, Ruby will say there's no number of legs method defined. So what are you talking about? Because Ruby is saying our present context is you're looking for an instance method on this object, and there's no things. But I can do dog dot number of legs here, and I get 4. So
That's weird.
it is weird, right? And look, and if I do dog dot bark, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to say there's no method called bark. It's important because inside any class, you can see these methods are going to be side by side sometimes, and if you don't know how they're distinctive, and actually this way of defining this thing is people almost never do that. Instead, they do that. They do self dot number of legs, and so these are equivalent.
That's what self. Okay. No. Yeah. That actually helps a lot on self because I have not figured out what self is yet.
Yep. Okay, so like, how does this apply to Rails? Maybe it's too early to. Well, no, I'll just okay. So like in Rails, you might make a dog model, right?
Yes.
You know what that means when you do that, and it's going to look like this at the top. It's going to be a subclass of ActiveRecord, right?
Yes.
Are you with me?
I think I'm with you.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just, instead of doing it
Like
theoretically,
I understand that ActiveRecord is like a class that governs all the rest of them.
yeah, well, okay, so
And Rails.
let's look at it this way. Um, let's make a Rails app real quick, and we'll call it, meaningless, because it's not going to mean anything. And while that's cooking, it's probably got to run bundle install or something. Let me show you one other thing that's important about classes is when you, let's say that when you make a dog, you want to give it a name, right? How do you do
Okay.
that? Like, how can we give every dog a name? Like every time we kind of we manufacture a dog in this dog factory or whatever metaphor is working for you, or you use the blueprint to make a dog, you want to give that dog a name because all dogs aren't named Spot or whatever. So you want to give it a name. How do you do it?
So def name
Yeah, like
with
that's right.
something beside it.
Yeah, so let's do that. So believe it or not, the way that Ruby would handle this is maybe like this. They would make a method called name equals. And then you would pass that a parameter. Doesn't that look weird?
That does look odd.
But that's how they do it. You just don't see it. And then in here, they're going to do something to kind of permanently set this value for this this object. And so the way
Like
that you
at name equals name.
that's right. And so because you're using at name, you're saying this is a permanent. This is a an instance variable that this little dog possesses. That's his and his alone. And so watch this.
Okay, I still don't understand that though.
Okay, well let's start over. So the first thing is
Like which name are we referring to? Are we referring to the def name or the name in the parentheses?
well let me maybe that'll make it a little clearer.
Okay. No, that helps.
Yeah.
All right. So at name gives you access to whatever the user inputs as new name.
Yeah. So it's a method,
Okay.
and when we call it, it's basically gonna look like this. We're gonna say, there'll be some dog instance variable. And we'll say that dog, his name is equal to Spot, right? And you'll probably do that. The funny thing is, Ruby doesn't care about spaces, and so really what you're doing is you're doing this. It's so funny. Anyway, so basically you're doing this. And now you can actually do this. And let's do it. So I'm going to go down here and kind of set this up. So I'm going to say, some dog is equal to dog.new, and then call, I have to use this $ for various reasons in here. And then let's load this. And it basically loaded all that code. So now if I do some dog dot, and I look at some dog, look at that. Do you see? There's now an instance variable that's been assigned for that
At
dog.
name Spot.
So you can see there's like 2 steps here. Basically these 2 steps, if I want to assign the name to this dog, first I have to create it, then I have to call this method, which is like it's basically an attribute writer method to set that attribute. Now just think about this. Like what if your dog had a name and a favorite toy and a hometown and a breed and all these things.
Attribute, right? Like the attribute accessor that lets you do both read and write.
Right. Okay, so like this little thing here that I built for name, that's basically an attribute writer, right? It's like the dog has an attribute name, and I want to be able to set it. So when you do this in Ruby, that is exactly the same as this. That's basically behind the scenes. Ruby is building this little method for you that's going to allow you to assign names. And so when you see,
That is hard for me to wrap my head around because I have not heard that before.
well, I mean, just imagine if you had like name and breed and toy and, you know,
It's kind of I did something similar for a car one that I built, and under the definition of car, I had at car equals at color equals color, but like I still did the at color equals color under definitionalize.
yeah. Okay, so that's where we're
So,
headed.
are you saying there was no need for that?
No, no, no. That's where we're headed. So basically, when you use ActiveRecord on a class, you don't need this stuff. So let me comment that out and comment out these other attributes that don't exist. And so we have a dog that just has ActiveRecord name, and let's run this code again. And we'll look at some dog. So I can still do this. I can still say sumdog.name equals, this is not a good name for a dog anymore. So I can change his name, right? But I deleted that method so ActiveRecord name is the exact same as that thing we had here before. You wouldn't want to clutter up a class with tons of little ActiveRecord methods, right? That's why you want to do stuff like this. I just want to say, let me set the name and the breed and the whatever, the height,
Okay.
And so that's ActiveRecord. Okay, what if you want to, we've been assigning the dog a name, but what if we want to discover the dog's name? Like we encounter a dog and we don't know his name, we want to ask that dog, what's your name? How would we do that?
We're asking the user the name?
No, like there's a dog. Let me put this further down so it doesn't distract us. So like there's a dog. There's a dog out there. I'm gonna get rid of all this stuff. Just get rid of it. Okay. So now we're back here. We just have this really simple class, and we're able to create a dog and assign his name. But how do we discover the dog's name? Like I want to do this. I want to say, yo dog, what's your name? And have him say, oh, my name is Billy.
Okay.
Okay. So
I do not know how to think about that.
okay. Well, first of all, do you think it would be an instance method, or a class method?
I would think it would be a class method.
Well, a class method.
Because
oh, yeah, go ahead.
because like we have class dog, but if you want something discoverable outside of the class of dog, like a name, then you couldn't build it inside of what all the other dogs are.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, you're definitely, you're not really leaving the class dog. I know what you mean. Like you're thinking like everything in here is
Like I'm thinking of building a separate class saying dog's name, because I wouldn't think you could discover a name within the same class as everything else.
well, when you're creating this object dog, it's going to have all kinds of attributes, and those attributes can be as crazy as you want. I mean, you could have thousands of attributes on a dog, and they're still within like the dog umbrella, So like over here, let me exit and come back. So like I can make a dog, right? This is like some dog equals dog.new, and this dog's got no attributes set, right? He's just like he's just like a cloned gross Play-Doh dog with no attributes. And so if I want to give him something, I have to say, okay, your name is equal to Millie, okay? And the dog's like, great. And I can do that because of this ActiveRecord name here. Like if I tried to do some dog dot whatever length, equals 5 or something, Ruby will say, you haven't defined a method length.
But if you wrote like def name and then, I don't know,
Like over,
parrot and then end
like over here?
as an instance variable, yeah, as an instance variable, and just gave it a name, a hard coded name. I know it's not discovering, but then would you use the name or would it use the def name,
Well, like,
the instance variable? I think.
yeah, that's a good question. So we can define this method over here, name. See, right now if I do sumdog.name, Ruby says there's no method name because I haven't saved this. So let me save this and come back. And now we're back in here. So sumdog, what did I call it? Sumdog.new. Oh, I got to use the. So like I can say sumdog.name, and I get nothing because we put nothing.
Because there's nothing in the method.
Right, and I could say I have decreed that every dog shall be called Sally. From here on out, every dog that's ever made from here on out is going to be called Sally. And I would say, here's an instance of dog, and now this instance method is going to say Sally, no matter what. But that's not what we want, right? What we want is an instance method that will actually give us back the instance variable that this dog possesses. And so it's really this.
It already possesses the instance variable name.
It does, because of this ActiveRecord stuff. There's an instance variable for name, there's one for breed, and there's one for height, even though we didn't set these last two. So I can, if I want to, I can just do this. Now watch this. So let me go down here and change some of this stuff. So this
isn't that the same thing?
You
isn't name at name the same thing as
name?
At name equals name?
Oh, it's not. Okay, so the two, let me get rid of this ActiveRecord stuff. So let's say we just have these two methods. We have name equals, and we're giving it, and we have this, and we're assigning that to this, and then we have this.
So one assigns it to something and the other one, nothing is assigned to it.
Right. So this is like, this is what's the word they use? This is an accessor, and this is a writer. And so now this dog has two methods. One lets you set his name, the other lets you discover his name. The dog will tell you his name. They look very similar, right?
They look very similar. And how do you, I guess, what do you mean by discover?
Well, not
because like we would still have to give it his name.
Right. I don't mean discover like it's this big mystery that no one knew until. I just mean like, well, let me show you. Like, being able to set the dog's name doesn't mean that you can get it back. So let me show you what I mean. So like,
yes. If it's not an instance variable, it'll go into the where.
Yeah. So let me, you know what? Let me grab this stuff and put it back up front where you can see it. So here we got our dog. And our dog is going to be named Spinner or something. I don't know. I don't know what good dog names are. So,
That works.
So here's our dog. His name is Spinner, and I can set that name to be something new because of this, these three lines here, right? So I can say,
yeah.
Oh, I want his name to now be Sam. Okay, so yep, his name is Sam, but I can't get his name this way because there's no method, there's no instance method on this dog called name. And when you do some dog dot whatever, there needs to be an instance method for that. Everything has to be a method.
So the current method
is only, when you say
a writer, or the current method we have that's not
grayed
out is
Right. Well, to Ruby,
Class method?
it's no, it's an instance method. But the thing is, James, to Ruby, these are totally different methods. This one is name equals, and this one is name. And to Ruby, that's as different as Siberia and Hawaii. I mean, they're totally different names to Ruby. Ruby is, these are 100% different. Name equals is the name of this method, and name is the name of this method, and they're. I mean, I could call this something like watch this. I can call it like, you know.
I get that they're completely different. What I don't understand is why.
Oh, because.
Like I don't understand the difference in the methods other than one you're setting something, the other you're not.
That's the only difference. Like one is for setting an attribute, the other is for getting that attribute. That's it.
I'm gonna still have to think about this.
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm so difficult.
No, it's all right. So like if you want to discover your dog's name, you know, you need to have access to a method that lets you do that. So now I've uncommented that, and now I can do someDog.name, and it'll tell me, and it's running this method right here. I just want you to kind of get this, because if you get it, then you'll understand ActiveRecord. Because the way ActiveRecord works is all about riders and accessors and class methods and instance methods, all upon these database tables and these database rows in those tables. So
you can't get something that doesn't exist. So if you deleted line 16 in your Vim,
yeah, okay,
and it's someDog.name, it would come up as nil.
right. So, oh, just line 16, you mean? Yeah. So like, let's do it. So clear. So now someDog exists, right? And so if I do someDog.name, it's gonna grab that instance of someDog and say, hey, return whatever @name is set to, and it'll be like, all right, it's not set to anything, it's nil.
So I was right.
You're right.
So then the getter has to have someplace to get from.
Yep.
It's not. I've been thinking user input this whole time. The getter has to have some place to get from. The writer waits for user input.
Yeah. You can look at it more this way, as like every dog is a container, you know, for information about itself. Just like, you know, I'm a contain. Like people would say, what's your name? What's social security number? Where do you know, there's all this stuff, and we contain that information inside of the boundaries of our our mind or our being or something. And so these setter methods like name equals, that's how you impart, that's how you transfer new information to the dog. And then the getter method, like name, that's how you extract information. It's like a query, like what's your name? But the dog himself, the dog itself, is a container with all these attributes, not just name, but you know, dogs aren't very complicated, so it's hard to come up with a lot of meaningful attributes for dogs. Yeah. You know, but like, you know, what, how big is it? How old is it? Is it sick or not? You know, and like, and so in
long hair, short hair, all that jazz.
Yep. And so every class in Ruby, you might make a class called, you know, car class or, you know, juicer class or something, and you're going to have all these attributes, and you just need to be able to get them and set them. So what about when you want to, I want to create a dog, and I don't want to have to go back and do more steps to give that dog a name. I want that dog to be assigned a name at the moment that dog is created. Do you know what I'm getting at? Like,
so like def create and
kind of
equals new equals forcing the user, or are we getting it from somewhere?
Like like right here, this line above my cursor. See where I'm saying dog.new? Like I want to be able to do this. I want to say dog.new, and I want to assign its name right there. Like that's what I want to do. And and then whatever
So
dog.
then it would be def initialize parent name, and then you would have your ATTR assessor with name up top.
Okay, so like this.
First, put your ATTR assessor up top
Okay.
so you can access name. And then under def initialize name, you would have at name equals name.
Absolutely. And you say that this is new to you. No way. Okay, so let's try it.
I don't know why I think that's the issue, or I think that's the answer, but
No, that's it. I think you.
that
did it
looks
right.
like the answer.
Yeah. So like, we'll try it out here. So like, stray dog equals dog.new. And what's funny is now this won't work because dog.new is expecting a name, and so if we don't give it one, it says, "Hey, you gave me zero
Wrong number of
arguments,
arguments.
and I should have had one." So we can say, "Hey, stray dog, your name is whatever, Scrappy," and so now you have this stray dog. And because we put adder accessor there, we can actually do stuff like this, and we can even change his name. Whatever.
I didn't realize that the ATTR assessor name and the definitionalized at name equals name did two different things. Now it makes a lot more sense for both of them to be utilized.
Yeah. Adder accessor, which I think is how you pronounce that. I don't know. Adder accessor. You're basically kind of at the top of your class saying, here's all the stuff that people are going to want to be able to set and read from this entity, from this object. And then initialize, what you're saying is, when I create one of these things, there's certain things we want to establish at birth, and so as when you pass them in, like maybe name and breed or something, and so you might do this, and then you might just do this. And this is a very common kind of convention, is that the initialize method is basically taking incoming parameters and transferring them right away to instance variables, because henceforth they're going to be carried around by this object internally, and it's kind of like that dog has those attributes and I don't have to remember what they are anymore, because the dog is going to remember. Does that make sense?
Yes, except you need the assessor for breed as well, don't you?
You do.
If you want to access it.
You do. Yes, you are hot. You are hot tonight. That's great. Yeah. So this is a really common Ruby idiom, is getting I would like you to get really comfortable with classes where you would just kind of go, I'll just make a class to handle this, or I'll make a class to do this. And the more comfortable you are, like when you're doing linked lists and some of these challenges that Firehose throws in front of you, eventually you'll have a section of your code that's, I don't know, 30 or 40 lines of code. You're solving a problem, and that's a really good time to break it into smaller pieces. I don't really expect you to know how to do that, right away, but the more comfortable you are building your own class, the happier you'll be. Okay, now let me jump over here to this Rails app that we made. What do we call it? Meaningless. Okay, so check this out, because I think you're going to find this kind of cool. I did bundle install, right? Okay, and I'm going to make a model in here. Rails generate a model, and we're going to make a dog, and the dog's going to have a name, and the dog's going to have an age, and the dog.
You don't have to type out generate? I didn't know that.
Oh, you don't have to. You can just say G. You can give it, is that good enough? Breed.
That seems good enough to me.
Good enough, right? Three attributes and a dog model. And Rails is going to generate all this other junk with it, probably. And breakdb create, breakdb migrate. And so now we have this dogs table in our system, and the dogs table has three attributes, and a dog model. And Rails is going to generate all this other junk with it, probably. And breakdb create, breakdb migrate. And so now we have this dogs table in our system, and the dogs table has three attributes, and a dog model. And Rails is going to generate all this other junk with it, probably. And breakdb create, breakdb migrate. And so now we have this dogs table in our system, and the dogs table has three at least 3 columns, right? One column for the dog's name, one for the dog's age, and one for the dog's breed. Okay, and so let's take a look at this. So if you go look at the dog, this is where it's kind of cool, because look at this class. There's like nothing here. There's nothing here at all. But look what I'm able to do in Rails. I'm going to fire up a Rails console in this project. And look, I'm able to say, you know, some dog equals dog.new. Right? And I'm able to do this.
It looks automatically for a name, age, and breed, even though there's nothing at.
Yeah, and that's the Rails magic, is Rails is saying, oh, this dog is an ActiveRecord class. Oh, well then he's probably connected to a dog's table somewhere. Yep. You know, and they'll go look for it and they'll say, oh yeah, there's the dog's table. And then Rails will say, hey, I wonder what kind of attributes we should be able to read and set for any dog. And then Rails will go, well, let's just go look at the columns on this dog's table. And they'll go through, and it does all this kind of magically. And so I can do something like this. I can say sumdog.name equals Phil, and it works, even though there's nothing in here. It's because Rails is doing all this behind the scenes and basically saying, if there's a column on your dog's table in the database, we're just going to assume that you want to be able to access that and write to it and read from it. And so this dog has all these methods, which, you know, there's basically a name method, there's a breed method, there's a what's the other one? There's an age method,
Age.
And there's the setter method.
All of that is already in a table somewhere that it's reading from.
Yeah, and so these methods, I mean, they really don't exist formally, but they're kind of built when you need them, but they're available to you, which is really cool. And so my question to you is like, well then what those are like the instance methods that Rails builds for you. Rails builds tons of them. I don't know, probably hundreds. But what are the class methods that Rails builds for you? Like, where do you see a class method for dogs? So check this out. Let me create a couple dogs here. So like I'll say
That I don't know.
okay, we're gonna make some young dogs. So dog.create, and we're gonna give them all the same name. This is gonna take just a second. So we're gonna make some young dogs that are like 1 year old. Let's see if that works. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just made a bunch of young dogs, and they all have the same name, which is kind of stupid. And then I'll make some old dogs. Okay, and we're gonna make them old. They'll be 11 years old, and these dogs are called Limpy. Okay, so we have some old dogs in our system. All right, so sorry, I did that kind of fast, but I just wanted to kind of fill up the database with some dogs. And so if I
Sorry.
no, it's no problem. So like I can do, you know, something like this, and Rails will say, yeah, okay, you have 16 dogs in your database now. A bunch of them are young Skippies, and then the rest are old Limpies. And so remember when we were talking about class methods, and I said, you know, class methods, like an instance method like initialize is related to one instance of a dog, but a class method is like related to the concept of a dog. It's related to the dog concept, the dog blueprint. It's not related to any one dog. And in Rails, isn't that, like, look at this. Does this look familiar? Dog.where. Have you ever used this? You know, when you want to query, oh, you haven't used that? Okay. Well, like when you want to query your, when you want to do queries to find dogs, okay, what about dog.find, right? I can say,
I've seen find.
okay, so like I want to find a dog. Find me the dog that has the ID of 3. And it'll be like, there he is. His name is Skippy.
It'll be the third Skippy one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And find is a class method on dog. Find is like, you're saying, in the world of all dogs, find me a dog that has this characteristic. His ID is 3. And then once you find him, you know, once you find him, like, you know, I can say a dog equals dog.find 3. Now, once you find him, look, I got him. Now I can ask him what his name is.
Now you can manipulate it.
Yeah, and I can set his name. So Rails sets up both of these things for you. You know, I can say, hey, find me all the dogs that are 1 year old. And it's like, there they are, you know, and there's 8 of them. And I can say, okay, find me all the dogs that are 11 years old. And Rails will say,
interesting.
There they are, and there's 8 of them. And so things like where, all
of those are pre-written class methods on a dog.
Yep, and Rails does tons of work for you behind the scenes, so that you can kind of. It takes a while to I don't know, even like memorize everything that's available to you, but it's nice that in the system like when I learned Rails, and then I feel like 3 years later I learned Ruby. I mean, honestly, and it was just, I had no idea what was happening, but I could kind of make it do what I wanted. And years later, when I finally like bought the right books and read through it, and I was like, oh my gosh, you know, the stuff I'm doing in Rails, it's not that scary. It's just basic Ruby classes, you know. So anyway, I mean, maybe that's enough for now, but
it's definitely a lot for you to think about.
All right. Well, let me stop.
Did you record this by chance?
I did. I'm gonna stop it here.